Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Nightmare Road. And I'm here with two spooky people. I have Kelly and Kate with us tonight. And Kate and Kelly are both on Speaking of Spirit podcasts. And so, since Decon couldn't be here tonight, we thought we're going to go ahead and push ahead with the story. And the reason why, even though the story is kind of done a lot, and it's done very well by some podcasters, it is I don't say near and dear to my heart because it's not. It's such a tragic case, but I grew up not far from this area. I've hiked the trails where these guys were found. I know where these guys were found. We four-wheeled all over the place up here. It's just an area that I'm very, very familiar with. So I thought, let's go ahead and do this story because it's something that is always, I think I was 14 years old, I think, when this story happened. We didn't have internet back then. We didn't, I'm ancient. So we didn't have internet. We had what the Sacramento Bee put out. The Sacramento Bee was the newspaper. The Mountain Democrat is still the newspaper. And if it wasn't in the newspaper, you didn't hear about it. Now, my mom heard about this case because she was a police officer at the time. So, all of the cops up and down heard about what was going on, and it was discussed in our household. And I just thought, God, it was just such a tragic case. But we're going to go ahead and talk about it. And we're talking about the Yuba County Five. They're called the Boys, colloquially through the county, but they were men. They're not boys. They were in their 20s?
Yeah, 24 to 32.
Yeah. So there's five guys, right? And all of them had some kind of mental handicap or deficiency. And I hate using those terms, but I don't know how else to say it. So, and they had all met through a thing called the Gateway Projects.
Yeah, the Gateway
Project. Yeah, in Yuba City. And to describe some of these guys a little bit, you had Jack Hewitt, Ted Wire, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, I believe, and Gary Mathias. And two of them, I think it was Gary Mathias and Jack Madruga, who had both military experience. They had both enlisted at one time. They were just maybe a little bit slow, but not so deficient that they couldn't join the military and do a fairly good job. But we have Jack Hewitt, who was, he had a speech impediment. He was illiterate, but he was a sweetheart. He sounded like such a sweet guy. And Bill Sterling, he was more socially engaged, I think, than all of them, right? Or than most of these guys. He seemed like he was really friendly and energetic. And I think, didn't he?
He was really religious too, did a lot of service, it sounded like, kind of like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So he sounded like another sweet, just a really sweet guy. And then there's, let's see, Ted Wire, who was Jack's. Weir. I don't know. I've heard it pronounced Wire. I've heard it pronounced Weir. I'm not sure. It's Weiher. He was considered Jack Hewitt's best friend, and they hung out together all the time. He held a job. He worked as a bag boy at a local grocery store. So, but he had a lot of fear in life. He was afraid of the woods. He was afraid of the dark. He was afraid of fire. He was afraid of a lot of things. He was also sounded like he was very regimented. Like he liked things exactly a certain way. And, yeah. So, and then we get to Jack Madruga. He was the only one who had a driver's license of these five guys. And he had a car that he absolutely loved. And it was a 1969 Mercury Montego. Yeah. So first off, I'm going to share a picture of the 5 guys, so you can see them here. Is it coming through yet?
Yeah, I see it.
You can see it because I can't see it on my end. You can see it?
Now I can.
Okay. Yeah. So here are the 5 men in question, the 5 boys. Okay. And then I want to show you a picture because I had to look up what a Mercury Montego looked like. I was not real familiar with it. It's a 2-door car. Kind of reminds me of, here we go. Kind of reminds me of, we had a Green Hornet growing up. And so it reminded me a little bit of that car. But this was his pride and joy. And he wouldn't let anybody else drive it. It was meticulously cleaned all the time. This was his baby. So when he was in the Army, he was a truck driver. He was considered pretty shy. And then we have Gary Mathias, who, when he was in the military, he started acting out, I believe, and he had some episodes of violence. Is that what you guys found out?
He was a heavy drug user too during that when he was in the military, and that's when he started really acting out. And then they diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah. And, and a lot of people who have that kind of paranoid schizophrenia, they self-medicate to try to calm whatever's going down in their head. And so it's not unusual before diagnosis for somebody to start using a lot of drugs to try to figure out how to quiet what's going on in their head. So I feel really bad for him. But he seemed really, really protective of this group of guys. And a lot of people believe that he was acted kind of like the group leader in effect for these guys, even though there wasn't really a leader. He was the one that they would follow. So I thought it was kind of interesting that, yeah, you're right. He did experiment with some drugs in the military, and he was actually put in the brig at one time. And he wanted out of the service, and I think he figured out the easiest way to get out of the service was to punch an officer in the face, and that's what he did.
Completely naked too.
Oh, was he completely naked? And that'll do it. I mean, that'll do it. Either you're going back to the brig or they're kicking you out. So, yeah. Anyway, all of these guys met at this Gateway Project, and they were on the basketball team. And they were actually, I guess, pretty good basketball players. So this whole story centers around them going to Chico to watch the UC Davis basketball team at Chico State University. I think it was at Chico State, but it was in Chico anyway, where they were playing their game. They had a game the very next day, but they wanted to go root UC Davis along for their, So they all get in the car and they head to Chico. And Chico's not that far. From Yuba, from Yuba
miles.
City. Sorry?
It's like 50 miles away, I think.
Yeah, it's not far. Basically, you just shoot up Highway 99 and you're there. So from Yuba City to Chico, 50 miles or so, and they're there. And there are some accounts. So I am going to show you a map when I can pull it up here. There are some accounts or Highway 71, I think, of maybe there could have been a fight or a little bit of an altercation when they were at the basketball game, but I haven't seen anything really conclusive on that. So to show you a map, down here, I don't know if you can see my cursor. So right down here is home. That's Yuba City. You go straight up 71, or you go straight up, I think this is 99. Yeah, 99. And you get to Chico. That's just, it's straight up. So apparently they had stopped either before or after the game, and they got snacks, they got drinks, milk or sodas or whatever, and they're at the basketball game, right? I didn't find that they, like I said, did you guys see anything about the altercation?
I didn't see anything about an altercation. Someone mentioned that they might have seen something that they weren't supposed to, or they, them being them, they seen something they're not supposed to, and they weren't aware that they weren't supposed to see it. And that's when this all kicked off.
Yeah, I guess that could be one theory, right, Kate?
Yeah, I think I think it's like a town theory more than anything. I don't think it's any police reports say any of that or anything official says that, but I guess if you ask members of the town, a lot of people say that something happened at that game.
Yeah, so one of the accounts that I've read, and one of the accounts that I've watched, said that there was a small altercation maybe at the basketball game, but it wasn't any big deal. It wasn't any big deal. It could have been something like, "Hey, sit down, we can't see," that kind of thing. It really didn't sound like it amounted to much. But maybe when they're in the parking lot, they see a drug deal or something going down. I don't know, but we don't know. But what we do know is that they ended up way off course. And I will show you. Let's see. I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit. I am going to show you guys where they were found. So they're found, basically, they go up a mountain into the Plumas National Forest. And it's really bizarre because they could have gone straight home, right? Straight back down the highway that they came up on. But instead, they took like a 70-mile detour. And if you see, here's Oroville. Let me find, here's Chico up here. Are you seeing the cursor?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then here's Oroville and Yuba City down here. Well, what they end up doing is coming up this road here. And they end up going almost 70 miles up this road. And their car is found stuck at the snow line. So this area up here, it's a fairly high altitude, not like we're used to in Idaho, right? But this area right here, it's probably the snow line's about 4,800 feet or so. And there was a lot of snow that year. So they don't open that road. They let the snow just close the road naturally. People do go up there with their snow machines. They go up and they'll drive up to the snow line, and then they'll cross country ski. There's no ski resort on that road, but there's a lot of outdoor people who will drive up, and they stop at the snow because they did it in my county, and they'll sled and they'll do stuff like that. So his car was found. Their car was found at the snow line where they couldn't drive any further, which I find really odd because of Gary's love of the car. I mean, that's not something I would think that he would typically do.
Yeah, and with the report, like the police said that it would have been something easy to move if the conditions were the exact same when they left the car from when the police found it.
They also inspected the undercarriage, and it didn't have any dents or dings or anything. It was pristine, like someone knew where all the ruts and rocks were in the road and didn't want to damage the vehicle, which is really strange.
Well, yeah, and some people theorize that maybe they had run out of gas, but there was a quarter tank of gas in the car. There was certainly enough for them to get right back down the mountain I mean, and get back into town. So they find the car, and it also, the keys are missing, and they were found later. So the keys are missing, and the driver's side window was down, and that totally is not characteristic of somebody who loves their car. They're not going to just leave their car and leave the window down and leave their car unprotected in the winter like that. It's just not going to happen. So there's all of these theories that goes on. They do find, when the police find the car, they do find that all the snacks that they had bought are littered in the car. And apparently, I mean, that's kind of typical for a road trip. But Gary was really meticulous about the car, so you would figure he'd cleaned it out when they got home. No big deal. But there's some interesting things here. We don't know why they took this detour, and there are some people that suggest in town there was a theory. There was somebody who had seen, and we'll talk about him in a little later, but there's somebody who saw a red truck that was following that car. They think that car. Somebody saw a red truck. And this red truck was seen at different locations up there at another, like a little country store. But the country store, I think, was even further away. It was in a different direction from where they were found.
Yeah, so the country store is it was on where the exit they would have had to take in order to get up to that mountain road.
Yeah, and there's also some discrepancies. So a woman in the country store said that she saw the car with not all of the boys, but most of the boys, right? And she saw one of the guys at a phone booth outside the store, and some of the guys had come in and bought some snacks, but there's some discrepancy in dates. Like when she said she saw them was like 2 days later. So it just didn't make any sense. Like if they were at that country store, why didn't they just go home? And the young man that she said was at the phone booth, I think she said it sounded like Jack's description, but I don't think it was either Jack or Ted, but they didn't like, they wouldn't use the phone. That's not what they did. They didn't like using the phone, like even at home.
No, there was also a reward put out at this, like right after the time the boys went missing. So she could have been saying something for the reward money, because it didn't make any sense. They disappeared. What was it? When did they disappear? They disappeared on the 24th, and she's claiming to see him on the 25th and 26th.
Yeah,
So that
that's what I
doesn't.
mean. It just didn't make any sense. This was 1978, February 24th, 1978. And so that didn't match up, but somebody else, I believe, had saw that red truck. That red truck had been noticed by other people. And so they don't know who was in this red truck. So so the kids, they get out of the truck, the kids, the boys, the men, they get out of their car, and they're gone. So so they start searching for them. Now, 2 days before the car was abandoned, the Forest Service has a trailer up by a lake up this road. And the Forest Service they have cabins all over a lot of different forests, right, for their personnel to stay in when they're working in those particular areas, especially when it's a very long drive back to a town, right? So they had taken a snowcat up that road just 2 days prior, and the snow was pushed the snow down and made trail up to the cabin so that they could winterize it and close the cabin for the winter. Obviously, nobody's going to be in the cabin all winter. So we have that scenario going on. So people are out looking for the boys, and we have this guy named Shone, right? and he drove a Volkswagen Beetle. And he apparently, according to everything that I have read, was not a real likable guy.
He was not. He was the town drunk. He had everybody had an issue with him, and I think somebody even said like if he ended up murdered, the whole town would be a suspect. That's how many people did not like this guy.
Yeah. So he apparently was the kind of guy who, when he would get drunked up, he would drive and either pull over or run his little Beetle off the road. And then people would go to help him out, and he wouldn't be very happy. I mean, he just was just not a nice guy. So he apparently drove all the way up to this where this Montego was abandoned, where the guy's cars was abandoned, and he couldn't get any further either because you have now an unplowed road, and that's the snow line. And so he finally gets out of his car. Now there's various stories, and Kate, do you want to talk a little bit about his stories?
Yeah, so his story, it's changed 3 or 4 times throughout their investigation, right? So the main story that he went with at first was that he was trying to get his car out, ended up having a heart attack. He's had heart attacks before. He knows what it feels like when they're coming on. Um, Ends up having to rest in the car and wakes up around 11:30 p.m. At this time, he sees headlights behind him, and he sees the Montego and the red pickup truck. And he said he saw several people outside. He had yelled for help. He said all the lights turned off and that everyone had piled into the red truck, I believe, and drove off. So that is his first story that was known to police when he told them about it.
Oh, I think I came across. He said that a little while later, like an hour or two later, um, while he was like in his car in excruciating pain with this heart attack thing, um, he saw lights out in the woods, like flashlights going through the trees, and he got out and he yelled for help, and the lights just shut off and went away, which is strange.
Yeah, and that's when he like headed down the mountain, and then a Good Samaritan picked him up, and then they reported that he had told them a totally different story, that he had just gotten stuck, and that I can't remember exactly, but when they told police, it definitely didn't match what he said to police when he told them about what had happened.
Yeah, it's bizarre to say the least that this guy ends up on the same road that the guys have now abandoned their vehicle. And what do you believe here? So again, this is down Oroville, Yuba City's down here, and they end up going up this road. They're way up here. Now, you're going to see something that says where they were found, but it's not accurate. It says the Yuba County 5 lost here, but this is not accurate. So I have looked at some of the information that the family has put out online, and I knew that that wasn't accurate because I've been up here in this area. And so this campground right here, there was the trailer that comes into this story is trying to find it. Sorry, guys.
What was interesting about his story too is that he said he was on this road on this particular night because his family has a cabin up there and he wanted to check it out before they came up within the next couple of days. But then afterwards, it was found that he did not own anything up there. So it's unknown why he was even in the area as well.
Yeah, the whole thing is.
Yeah, it was theorized that he was at the local bar or the local ski lodge or whatever it was, and he got he got hammered and did what he normally does and drove around and got stuck. But he was using I was looking to look at this cabin I'm renting as a cover for DUI, just in case, because now cops are involved. right?
Yeah, there's some theories that he must have known people on the police force because he seemed to be out driving drunk all the time and nobody did anything. But you have to remember too, this is the 70s. If you were well known in the town, a lot of people would kind of be aware of who you are and make sure you got home, and a little different time than we have now. Still, small towns are like that. This area is definitely grown, but anyway, I want to get back. So they start searching for these boys, and I think they searched for. They started the search, but a big storm hit the search party as soon as they started searching for the guys. And even one of the search and rescue personnel started, I think he started having like a minor heart attack or something in the middle of the search. Big storm hit. I mean, there's really not a whole lot they could do when these storms hit the Sierras. I mean, it's windy and snowing and just, I mean, it's just a bad storm. So I don't think that in Discovery they search for them, but I think the search goes on and off for, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it several months?
Yeah, it wasn't until June 4th until they made a breakthrough in their search up here.
Okay, yeah. So 4 months or so they've been trying to find these guys, and there's like no, because the storm came in, any footprints that they would have left in the snow is obliterated almost immediately, so it's not like they could even find them. And you have a storm that intense, they probably didn't bring out search dogs at that point because the storm's so bad. So they're gone, the tracks are covered. People wonder about search and rescue dogs' ability to track in the snow, and actually it's better. I have bloodhounds, and tracking is actually easier for a hound on the snow. But if it snows on top of a track, it can hurt. It can hurt that ability for a dog to pick up the scent. So snow can hold the scent really well, but not when it gets obliterated by maybe another foot or two of snow. So yeah.
Right. And living like where we live in the mountains, we understand just how much snow happens in a storm. Like there's probably, a few good feet of snow, if not several feet of snow right here. And that makes it super difficult to try and do anything, let alone a search and rescue mission.
Right. So I believe there was a group of motorcyclists who were out in June. Now, by June in the Sierras, it gets hot, and so the snow's melting, and they're out on their bikes. The snow, and they're messing around out on all these trails. So this whole place, and I show you you see the map here. This whole area is just littered with like logging trails or logging roads from where they do their clear cuts. There's 2-track trails everywhere. There's motorcycle trails everywhere. So this area right in here is kind of where the Forest Service trailer was located, and I will show you a picture of the trailer. So these guys are out on their motorcycles, and they run across some bodies, I think, at that point. And they were the first. Let's see. This is the trailer.
So the window was broken, and they noticed a really bad odor coming from it and found the first body.
Yeah. So the trailer was oh God, I just can't even imagine what these guys went through. So when the police went into the trailer and they found, I think it was Ped's body, and he was completely wrapped in like several sheets and all tucked in around him. And he didn't have his shoes and socks on. I believe they were missing, and they weren't even found in the trailer. And so that was the first body to be found. And then I believe they started looking further. I'm sorry, I've got notes all over the place. They started looking at the trails and going down the trails, and I believe that's when they ran across the other bodies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they ran across the two other guys, and then later on um, they found the last guy.
Now, if you look, I think the car was somewhere around in here. And instead of going up, now I don't know what, I would imagine that to get to the cabin over in here, or the trailer, that the Forest Service came off the road with their gator and had to come down this trail, this dirt road. So that's probably why they ended up off this main road here, because it's pretty easy to lose your bearings when you're out there, especially at night. I don't know if they all had flashlights, but they're following a packed trail. And if that's the route that the Forest Service took a couple of days before with the snowcat, that would have been an easy route for them to follow. But two of the men were not found on a packed trail. They were off on another trail. And we're talking about several feet of snow up here. That's not easy going. I mean,
No.
you're falling up through your hips in fresh snow. You know? So searchers, they'd found Ted, and then 2 days later, and this is the most heartbreaking thing of all to me, Jack Hewitt's dad was on the search because he really, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to be up there searching for your son. And when they found Ted, I mean, that's like, then everybody's coming in, right? They're going to try to find where are the other boys at? What happened to them? And he was looking under, like tree branches and whatnot, and they found a portion of Jack's body, and it appeared, I think it was his spinal column or something like that.
Yeah.
I just can't even.
His dad found his jacket under by a
Oh, his
bush, and
jacket
his
first.
dad went to pick up his jacket, and his spine fell out from it.
Oh God, I just can't even. I can't even imagine that he found his son like that. I can't even imagine the nightmares this poor man has gone through.
Yeah, and then a while later, they found the rest of them all scattered through the woods.
Yeah, right. Because animals are going to scavenge whatever they can. So I mean, that's all right. So they found that, and they said, oh yeah, that it was near a manzanita bush. And if you're from the Sierra Nevadas, you know what manzanita is. It doesn't grow everywhere. It's a very it's a hardwood. It's manzanita is just like everywhere in the Sierra Nevadas. So then an area northwest of the trailer, roughly a quarter of a mile, they found 3 Forest Service blankets and a rusted flashlight by the road. And they couldn't tell how long those items have been there. So one of the things that they found in the trailer were like writing. How would you describe that? It was like
Affirmations. So what Gary was doing when he was trying to um, fix his mental health issues, become a better person, they would work on affirmations like, I am stronger than this. So he would write those down, and they found those everywhere.
So the thought was that at least Gary, and they know Ted obviously, had made it to the trailer, right? And
yeah. And Gary's boots down there.
And Gary's boots are found there. Okay. But what was interesting was very little of the food cache that was left there by the Forest Service, because they left a lot of supplies in there, probably for somebody who got stranded, at least to be able to help them out. There was never a fire made, even though there was a stove and wood. And they figured a theory is by the search and rescue community that because Gary had been in the service, he knew some first aid stuff. He was probably trying to take care of Ted, but he was the person who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he didn't have his medication with him. And so after a period of time not being medicated, he was probably in a full-blown schizophrenic situation. And we don't know how long that would have taken, and we don't know what happened.
We do know on Ted, it was reported that he might have been alive anywhere from like 8 to 13 weeks after the incident, because when they were examining his body, his beard hair was long enough for that period of time. So that's like the best guess we have of how long at least Ted and Gary were in the trailer for.
Can
And
you imagine what poor Ted went through watching Gary coming off his meds? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
just what
can't
they had.
imagine.
Yeah.
and Gary got a pry bar and went out to the sheds out there and pried the locks off the doors to see what was in there, and he found fuel and food. They had enough dry food to feed all 5 guys for a year. They had enough food, and they had enough wood, matches, a butane grill, but they didn't light a fire. And
Which is odd to me. I mean, what?
well, think he's going okay. So Gary's going through, probably his meds are wearing off. He's out of town. Doesn't have them with him. They get in an altercation. That paranoia is kicking in. So maybe he's up there and that military survival training kicks in, and he's like, hey, we cannot be spotted. You cannot start a fire. You cannot have any smoke out. Don't leave trash outside because somebody's going to see you throw trash out, and then we're going to be spotted. But that's just a guess on my part.
I could see that because I think it takes, a week or a little bit more time for you to come off those meds for those to not be in your system. So I would be curious to know how long it took for those to be out of his system and why they didn't light a fire initially. Like, because that makes sense. The psychosis makes sense after a little bit of time, but why not when they first got there light a
Uh,
fire?
uh,
Well,
the
Ted,
the other guy had no common sense. So
yeah,
he's like,
and
I'm freezing to death. We need to start a fire. And for some reason he's just like, no, I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. I don't know.
Ted was involved in a house fire and didn't, when they were trying to get him out of the house as his ceiling was on fire, he didn't want to leave his bed
Yeah,
because
he
he
stayed
didn't,
in bed. He stayed in bed until his alarm went off to tell him to go to work, because he was afraid that if he got up and started doing stuff around the house that he'd be late for work. That was one of his little
yeah.
quirks.
And you got to wonder too if that triggered some kind of phobia with him with fire later. Like maybe he didn't want to have a fire, but I mean, that trailer is going to be cold. It's winter in the Sierras. It's going to be cold. So I don't know. There's so many questions in my mind. Like why didn't they eat the food? At least Ted, even if Gary didn't eat the food, why didn't Ted eat the food? I mean, and I can understand coming
I
off
think
the meds and
I think I heard that Ted was afraid that if he ate the food, he would get in trouble later on. So if the rest,
yeah,
like,
I don't
Forest
know if
Service
we know
came
that.
up and were like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" and he's like snacking on something, they'd be like, "That's government property. You're in trouble," and he didn't want that, or stealing is bad, or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean that's a theory, right? I don't know that we know that for sure unless he left some
Yeah,
kind of note, something. But I don't know. Anyway, so so we have 4 bodies found, right? We talk about Jack, but we haven't talked about So many notes. Sorry. So two of the boys were found on that trail, and the father found the one, right? And Kate, you disappeared. And the one, Kate, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, we can't see you anymore. So it could be just your internet sketchy a little bit. So most likely it is believed that Madruga and Sterling died of hypothermia, probably about halfway through the long walk, either to the trailer or leaving the trailer. I don't know. We don't know what happened, but they were found on the trail about halfway between the road and the trailer. The snow drifts were between 4 and 6 feet deep at this point up there in the Sierras. So it's unlikely. I'm in my head, I can really rationalize if you're lost in the woods and you're following a trail, you think it might lead to safety. So that's why they're following the snowcat. So also, there's a thought that maybe all of them made it to the trailer at one point, and then the rest left to go trying to get to safety or trying to get back down the mountain to get people to help them. It's hard to tell. We don't know what happened. I mean, there's months and months that went by. One of the interesting things that I found was this Shones guy. That was his name, right? Shones.
Yeah.
And that allegedly after the boys one boy's never been found. One of these men have never been found, right? And that is Gary. Which one?
Gary Mathis was never found.
Okay, Gary. Yeah, he's never been found. He's still considered. He's on. If you go to missing people, his name and his picture still comes up. I believe he died up there somewhere, and I just don't think he's been found. I think the body's been scavenged and spread all over, and I think someday he will be found. I can't imagine. There's some theories that he attacked and killed the boys. I don't know. It's so hard to say what happened up there. But where would he go? In a full-blown schizo kind of, in the mindset that he would have been in off of his meds, let's say even if he did do that, where did he go? If he made it back into safety, he would have been picked up by law enforcement somewhere, because he probably would have been acting out somehow, and his fingerprints are in the system because he's in the military at one point. He would have been found.
Or all of his friends are now unfortunately deceased, and he's the last guy standing, and he decided to go out and face whatever's outside that trailer.
Yeah,
Or
maybe.
a lot of
I don't
people get
know.
lost in the woods, like when they're having a rough time in life. Yeah, how many people do you hear just say, "I'm just gonna go out into the woods"? You know, maybe that's
maybe he faced the persons that they got in an altercation with, or the guy in the Beetle, or maybe he was just like, all my friends are gone, I'm sad, I'm going on walkabout. That was it.
Yeah. So it comes after the boys are found. Let's come back to this Shones character. So we've already stated he has changed his story several times. There was one story that he walked into a lodge that was down the road a ways from where he was stranded, and he made some weird statements, and nobody could figure out what he was talking about.
Yeah, he was mumbling to himself, and he was saying something along the lines of, I should have done this 2 years ago.
Yeah, and no one knows what that means. No one knows if he's ever met any of the five. Nobody, I mean, just there's all these questions, but the thing that was that his behavior right after the boys were found was that he was constantly in tears. So, I mean, that's weird.
His daughter had some kind of developmental issue. So
Right.
she was part of that group that the boys were in. So they're theorizing that maybe maybe he met
Maybe.
the boys or something like that. And I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, was he the only other person who saw the red truck besides the people at the store, or was there someone else?
There was one other person who saw the red truck with, I think it was Ted, a year prior to the incident, up in this around in the same area. But it wasn't a significant encounter. They just told this man that they were out hunting, and it was a man, Ted, and the man's presumed son that was looked around like 13 to 14 years, if I remember right.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense because Ted hated the woods. He hated hurting
Yeah, and
animals.
he didn't like hunting. So that whole thing was weird, right? So, but okay, let's remember it's the 70s too, and a lot of stuff's going down in the woods. And the Sierra Nevadas is a hotbed, and it still is, even though marijuana is legal in California now. The Sierra Nevadas were a hotbed for illegal grow operations, and they happened all up there. I worked in the 80s for the Forest Service, doing summer work, and we had to take classes on how not to like get blown up by tripwires in the Sierra Nevadas, because they would take these grow operations and they would booby trap them. So it's possible that at some point these it's possible that they stumbled upon something they shouldn't have stumbled upon. And then maybe those people, I don't know, I'm just thinking here. I'm like, what could have happened? Maybe they're up in Chico and those people would happen to be there and they went, oh, those are the guys. Those are the guys. Not knowing that those guys probably couldn't make the connection or wouldn't make the connection of what they saw. I mean, there was a whole chain of events that must have happened here that just took these guys up a road that they would never probably have gone up in the middle of winter with snow everywhere. I can't even imagine what happened to these guys. This whole Gary thing, or I mean, not Gary, but the Shone guy, do I think he had something to do with it? I don't know. I think he was just, I, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what to say about this. I can't make heads or tails about why he would keep changing the story. If he was really the town drunk, he probably couldn't remember what he saw from one minute to the other.
No,
I,
no.
Right.
That
And if you're having, like, truly having a heart attack, what's happening to you then? You're probably not fully coherent anyway. So that on top of probably being drunk, like, who knows what
who
he experienced.
knows? I don't think that, well, I can't say this, but I don't know. My personal thought is that Gary didn't off his buddies. I think it was a tragic chain of events that happened. But I can't explain not building a fire. I can't explain not at least consuming the food and trying to stay alive. I can't justify that. I can't rationalize that in my head, because you would think at least the other guys would go, we're hungry. We're going to eat this stuff. Even if we don't have a fire, we'll figure it out. We'll do something, but we got to eat. So there's all of these inconsistencies here. And the fact that they were found, oh my God, so far away from their car. They were so far away from their car. How hard it is to walk in the snow. They were so far away from their car. What happened? Yeah. I just have a really hard time with this. The inconsistency with the time frame at the store from the sighting, but she also saw the red truck. So she did see the red truck. So we have all of these red truck sightings. Did these guys, like you guys said, did they stumble upon something they shouldn't have seen, and then the red truck chased them up the mountain, and
that's
then
what
turn
I'm
around and
thinking.
take off? That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and then I would assume that Gary Mathis, his training kicked in. And he's like, okay, they're gonna take us up here. We got to run up here, hang out for here, and then split up, and then meet back down at the bottom of the mountain. It was just, but everything was going bad from the get. So
I kind of, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to say, I kind of wonder, like, I was trying to figure out how we could loop all three of the testimonies that the police kept that they thought were something of significance and what happened out there. And I kind of wonder if we have a serial killer on our hands. Just because if you're looking at California during this time, we have the Golden State Killer, we have Ted Bundy, we have three other serial killers that are called I think it's the Freeway Killers or something like that. So what
Five killer. There was all
yeah,
kinds of stuff going on.
yeah. So I wonder if someone was aspiring to be a serial killer, chose a target population that they thought might be easier to take advantage of, which, their hometown was in charge of the Gate City project, right? And it might explain if he's been vetting these people out to see if, like, maybe he could force them to go off somewhere, maybe kill them or something like that. Maybe he met one, talked Ted into going hunting or maybe sightseeing or something like that. Got to know the boys, somehow got them up there, and then that's why they took off running into the woods. Because that's the hardest part, I think, of the whole case to explain, is why they left the car and went so deep into the woods. So that's kind of the thing that I was looking at in the case. I also, one thing I really like to learn about is haunted roads. And, some roads, if you see a certain type of car, you don't stop for it. If you see a certain type of person, you don't stop for them, right? And this one's kind of harder where we see the red truck everywhere else. But I kind of wonder, maybe this was a haunted road and maybe something paranormal or out of this world happened there, and they just unfortunately happened to be the victims of it.
yeah, this serial killer theory is actually pretty interesting, but maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of sicko hunting group that pegged these poor boys, and we're just like, okay, we got our game, so we'll
Yeah, you
head
would
them up.
think it would be more
Head
than
them.
one person, right?
The red truck had 6 passengers in it, and one of the passengers was a woman with what they said was a small infant. So I don't know. It's just a theory that maybe there's some kind of sicko hunting club that decided to herd these boys, these young men, up to the mountain and just hunt them down.
Well,
So
so the woman with the infant, right, that was reported by Shone. But the earlier sighting the year before with Ted, it was a father with his son and Ted. So what if it's like this family thing? The husband is like hiding it from the family. He's talking these boys into coming back to their house, saying that they can't call anyone, tell anyone what happened, like someone was accidentally killed at first, or he made him believe that. You know what I mean? Like, you could really play it out a whole bunch of different ways and make it so that they really were at the gas station on the 25th and the 26th as well, but no one knew. Like, you know what I mean? You could really, you sat down, like, I tried mapping it out, and it probably is a little crazy and hard to explain, but you could really play into the serial killer thing.
This whole case is just crazy.
Bizarre.
There's so
it
many
is
twists and
bizarre.
turns.
So there's another twist to this, and that Gateway Project was actually vandalized several times, and the building itself. Now, I heard on a podcast that the guy who owned or started Gateway Project was actually himself killed, but I could never find anything to substantiate that. So, but it was in the newspapers that I read back, that the building itself was targeted several times. That people, I don't know, some weird group of people didn't want this really cool, like, facility there to help people who need help. It's like, how sick is that? But anyway, they were targeted several times. Windows were knocked out. Things like that happened. And then the story goes that this guy was like murdered who owned it. But again, I can't find anything on his death other than I just heard it somewhere. So, could it have been the same group that was targeting the Gateway Project and vandalizing it, who went after these young men or these men? I don't know. I call everybody young now at this point because I feel so old. But could it have been they were targeted because of this? I mean, these are basketball players in the Special Olympics. How can you target people like that? I don't get this.
Yeah,
There's
it's got a hate crime stench to it. Like, I didn't know about the building being previously vandalized, so whoever's doing it has some hate in their heart, and they find out that these 5 boys are going out of town all by themselves. It sounds like easy pickings to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, a bizarre story. It's a true story. You can look up the facts. It's just, I don't know. I don't want to say because I hate going there, but it also smacks a little bit of law enforcement cover up. Small towns not maybe doing everything they can. I don't know. It just, there's so many weird things here with this story. I know some groups have actually gone on to, like, they call this the American Deadlaw 5 pass incident thing, that then there's paranormal stuff associated with it. I don't think it was paranormal as so much as maybe sick people targeting people who are very vulnerable. And all of these guys, I mean, you know, when Gary's medicated, he was fine. And people like this are vulnerable. And these, God, it's just so sad because these boys had all come together and they were having the time of their lives. They were just hanging out, having the time of their lives, and then they're snuffed out. And I don't understand it. And I don't know that anybody's ever going to get to the bottom of this. It's happened so long ago. But I hope and pray for their family's sake that somebody somewhere has information and it's brought to light somewhere. I would hope, but I don't know that it's going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a sad story all around.
Yeah. Just so many twists and turns, and because I grew up 4-wheeling and hanging out in this forest all the time, and it just really hit home for me. But we have we have some very bizarre cases coming up that you probably have never heard of. So stay with us, folks, and we're going to keep bringing you some bizarre tales. And I'm pretty sure that some of these you've never heard of. Even though you might have heard of this one, you won't have heard of the rest of them. There's some bizarre stuff we're going to be talking about soon. So anyway, that's all. As Deacon would say if he's here, make sure you look both ways before you cross Nightmare Road. And please subscribe to us so that you can get all of the extra content. We're going to be doing bonus content soon. And yeah, hang with us, folks.